Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be looking at Dr. Rick Hanson's work
Oh, cool.
and specifically on mindfulness and happiness.
Yeah.
I think this is something that a lot of people are interested in,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of people, struggle with it too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to understand how mindfulness can change the way our brains work
Okay.
and make us happier and more at ease
Yeah,
in our daily lives.
that makes sense.
Not that temporary, I just got a new phone, kind of happy,
Right.
but deeper and more enduring well-being
Yeah.
that, wisdom traditions have always talked about.
It's fascinating how Dr. Hanson, a neuroscientist,
Yeah.
bridges ancient wisdom with modern brain science.
I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about him,
Yeah.
is that he's really able to bring those two worlds together.
And his own search for lasting happiness
Yeah.
led him to study the brains of experienced meditators
Wow.
and even explore what might be happening in the brain of an enlightened person.
Okay, so where do we even begin with this?
Well, Dr. Hanson starts with a pretty simple idea.
Okay.
Our brains are the control center
Yeah.
for everything we experience.
All right, break that down for me.
He calls it the final common pathway.
Okay, what does that mean?
So think of it this way. Whether you're feeling joyful, stressed,
Yeah.
or anything in between,
Mm-hmm.
it all comes down to neural activity in your brain.
Okay.
So if we can understand how these neural networks work,
Right.
maybe we can learn to influence them and cultivate greater happiness.
So we're not talking about replacing ancient wisdom,
No,
but understanding it better through the lens of neuroscience.
exactly. And Dr. Hanson has immense respect for traditional practices.
Okay.
He sees neuroscience as a way to explain how they work. For example, he suggests we can learn a lot by studying the brain activity of
Right.
long-term meditators
Right.
who experience deep peace
Yeah.
and try to identify the specific neural pathways that are activated in those states.
So by understanding those pathways, we might be able to intentionally activate them in our own brains.
Precisely, that's where the concept of reverse engineering comes in.
Reverse engineering.
Dr. Hanson proposes that we can essentially learn to stimulate and strengthen
Okay.
those neural pathways associated with happiness, even if we haven't been meditating for years.
So we can actually train our brains for happiness,
Yes.
almost like building a muscle.
Yeah, like building a muscle.
But wouldn't knowing the brain mechanics behind happiness take away some of the mystery and magic of these practices?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Dr. Hanson actually suggests that understanding the brain can actually make these practices more effective and even more awe-inspiring.
Really? Okay, how so?
Well, it all comes down to this fundamental principle of neuroscience.
Okay.
Neurons that fire together wire together.
Mm-hmm.
This means the more we engage in certain mental activities like mindfulness, the stronger those neural connections become.
So it's like a feedback loop.
It is a feedback loop.
The more you do it,
Yeah.
the stronger it gets.
Exactly.
Dr. Hanson believes that when we grasp this,
Yeah.
it can be a powerful motivator to keep practicing.
Yes, definitely.
I get that. It's kind of like knowing that lifting weights will actually build muscle.
Right.
Makes you more likely to stick with your workout routine.
Exactly.
Seeing actual changes in the brain might make us more committed to mindfulness practices as well.
Absolutely. And that's just one of the benefits
Oh, okay.
Dr. Hanson highlights.
Tell me more. What are some of the other benefits he talks about?
He emphasizes that understanding the brain gives us a framework
Okay.
for understanding various psychological and spiritual practices
Right.
and their impact on us.
And their impact on us.
Yeah, and it also helps us choose practices that
That's
are
right.
most effective for you personally.
So it's like personalized medicine
Yes,
for the mind.
that's a great way to put it.
Interesting.
And this understanding also opens up exciting possibilities for new approaches, like using neurofeedback to train our brains for well-being.
So we're not just limited to traditional practices.
Yeah.
We can actually use technology and our knowledge of the brain
Right.
to come up with new and innovative ways to cultivate happiness.
Exactly.
This is getting pretty exciting.
It really is. And Dr. Hanson suggests that this knowledge can even give us insights into what might be happening in the brain of an enlightened person.
Now that's a thought-provoking idea.
It is, isn't it?
What do you think that might look like?
Well, that's something for each of us to ponder as we continue our exploration.
Okay.
But before we delve into that,
Yeah.
let's talk a bit more about those traditional practices and how they fit into this whole picture of neuroscience and well-being.
Sounds like a perfect place to pick up in part two.
Mm-hmm.
So before we left off,
Mm-hmm.
we were about to dive into how traditional practices
Yeah.
like meditation
Yeah.
fit into this whole picture of neuroscience and well-being.
Right.
It sounds like Dr. Hansen sees real value in these practices,
Oh, absolutely.
even though his background is in science.
Yeah, he has a deep respect for traditions like Buddhism,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to understanding the mind.
Okay.
He sees neuroscience not as a replacement for these practices,
Mm-hmm.
but as a way to understand how and why they work.
So it's like we're using science
Yeah,
to illuminate something
right.
that's been known and practiced for centuries.
Exactly.
What are some specific examples of how this plays out?
Well, take mindfulness meditation, for example.
Yeah.
We've known for a long time that it has all sorts of benefits,
Right.
like reducing stress, improving focus.
You're right. Reducing stress, improving focus.
But now with brain imaging, we can actually see how mindfulness changes neural activity,
Oh, wow.
particularly in areas like the amygdala,
Okay.
which is involved in processing emotions like fear and anxiety.
So we can actually see the brain becoming calmer
Yes.
and more balanced through these practices.
More balanced, exactly.
Does that mean we can all just meditate our way to a perfect brain and a life free from stress?
That's where it gets a little more complicated.
Okay.
Remember, neurons that fire together, wire together, works both ways.
Right.
If we've spent years cultivating negative thought patterns or reacting to stress in unhealthy ways,
Yeah.
those neural pathways are well trodden too.
So it's not a quick fix,
Right.
but more like a process of gradually rewiring our brains
Exactly.
towards more positive states.
Towards more positive states, and that's where the real work comes in.
Okay.
Dr. Hansen emphasizes that understanding the brain isn't about seeking some kind of neuro-nirvana,
Okay.
but about recognizing that we have the power and responsibility to shape our minds through conscious effort.
That makes me think about how often we let our minds run on autopilot,
Yes.
especially in our busy modern lives.
Yeah.
Dr. Hansen's work seems to be saying that we don't have to be passive passengers in our own minds.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
He's really advocating for a proactive approach to well-being where we're actively engaged in cultivating positive states, not just waiting for happiness to happen to us.
So it's about making mindful choices throughout the day,
Yes.
not just sitting on a cushion for 20 minutes.
Precisely. And it's also about recognizing that change takes time and effort.
Yeah.
We may not see immediate results,
Right.
but by consistently practicing mindfulness, gratitude, compassion,
Yeah.
or whatever qualities we want to develop, we're slowly but surely changing the landscape of our minds.
I can see how understanding the science behind this could really help people stay motivated,
Yes.
especially when things get challenging.
Absolutely.
If you know that your efforts are actually rewiring your brain for the better,
Right.
you're more likely to keep going right.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to another benefit Dr. Hansen highlights.
Okay.
Understanding the brain can be incredibly empowering.
Right.
It shows us that we're not just victims of our circumstances or our genes.
Right.
We have agency.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
We're not just stuck with the brains we were born with.
Right.
We can actually change and improve them.
We can change and improve them. Exactly.
I have to admit, I was a bit skeptical about all this brain stuff at first.
Yeah.
But the more we discuss it, the more sense it makes.
It's really about bringing together the best of both worlds.
Okay.
Ancient wisdom and modern science.
Yeah.
Dr. Hansen doesn't claim that neuroscience has all the answers,
Right.
but he sees it as a valuable tool for enriching our understanding of ourselves and our potential for well-being.
It's like we're using a new lens to look at these ancient practices
Yes.
and gain even deeper insights into their power and effectiveness.
And that deeper understanding can lead to even greater benefits,
Okay.
not just for our own individual well-being, but for the world around us.
Now that you mention it, Dr. Hansen does talk about cultivating wisdom and compassion as well.
He does.
It's not just about feeling good,
Right.
but about becoming better humans, right?
Right. He sees wisdom and compassion as emerging naturally from a well-trained mind,
Yeah.
a mind that's been cultivated through mindful awareness, kindness, and understanding.
So it's not just about personal happiness,
No.
but about developing qualities that benefit everyone.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing ideas Dr. Hansen explores.
Okay.
Understanding the brain might even offer insights into what happens in the mind of an enlightened person.
That's a fascinating thought.
It is.
I wonder what kind of brain activity we'd see
Yeah.
in someone who has truly transcended suffering
Right.
and embodies wisdom and compassion.
That's a question worth pondering, but before we get too carried away with enlightenment,
Okay.
let's bring it back to what all of this means for you in your everyday life.
Good point. After all, we're not all trying to become enlightened masters,
Right.
but we could all use a bit more happiness and peace of mind in our daily lives.
Exactly. And that's where understanding the brain can offer some practical tools and insights.
Well, this has been a pretty amazing deep dive so far.
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
from the basics of neuroscience to the potential for rewiring our brains for greater well-being.
It's been a lot.
But before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about those practical tools you mentioned.
Okay.
What are some concrete things we can do
Yeah.
to start applying all of this to our own lives?
That's a great question, and it's a perfect place to pick up in part 3.
Okay, so we've explored, the science behind all of this.
Yeah.
We've even touched upon the idea of like an enlightened brain or something.
Yeah.
But how do we actually use this in our lives?
Right. That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need to actually put this into practice.
Yeah.
And Dr. Hansen provides a lot of practical guidance.
What are some of the specific things he recommends?
Well, he emphasizes that it all starts with awareness.
Okay.
We need to become more mindful of our thoughts, feelings, sensations throughout the day.
Yeah.
So this might involve formal practices like meditation,
Okay.
but it also extends to everyday moments.
So even something like,
Paying attention to your breath while you're waiting in line at the grocery store
absolutely.
can be a form of practice.
It's about bringing that quality of mindful attention to whatever you're doing,
Okay.
whether it's washing the dishes or talking to a friend or even dealing with a difficult situation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we're constantly
Right?
reacting to stress with negativity or anxiety,
Yeah,
we're strengthening those pathways.
exactly.
But if we're, consciously choosing to respond with more mindfulness and calmness,
Yeah,
then we're creating new, more positive pathways.
that's exactly it.
Okay.
And Dr. Hansen offers a variety of techniques for doing this.
Like what?
For example, he talks about the importance of taking in the good,
Okay.
actively noticing and savoring positive experiences, even small ones.
Oh, that reminds me of something he said about how our brains have a negativity bias.
Exactly.
Like we tend to focus more on the negative experiences than the positive ones.
Which, can kind of drag us down.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to make a conscious effort to shift that balance. To really soak in those moments of joy, gratitude, connection.
I see.
You know?
So we almost have to train ourselves
Yeah.
to appreciate the good stuff.
Yeah.
Especially when it feels like, things are so chaotic and overwhelming.
That's where the practice of gratitude comes in.
Okay.
Dr. Hansen talks about how expressing gratitude, whether it's writing in a journal or simply saying thank you to someone,
Yeah.
can have a profound impact on our well-being.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating like genuine feelings of appreciation
Right.
for the good things in our lives.
Exactly. And it's not about denying the negative either.
Yeah.
Dr. Hansen acknowledges that difficult emotions are a part of life,
Right.
but he encourages us to approach them with mindfulness and compassion
Okay.
rather than getting swept away by them.
This all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think, a lot of people listening probably feel the same way I do, which is sometimes it feels like there's just not enough time in the day for all of this,
Right.
between work and family and everything else.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to find the time to practice mindfulness and gratitude?
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
But Dr. Hansen emphasizes that even small moments of practice can make a big difference.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be an hour-long meditation session.
Right.
It could be 5 minutes of focused breathing,
Yeah.
a few moments of appreciating a beautiful sunset,
Okay.
or simply choosing to respond to a stressful situation with more patience and understanding.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off a little bit,
Right.
knowing that even these small, consistent efforts
Yeah.
can create positive changes.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
We're not striving for perfection here. It's about gradually cultivating these qualities and integrating them into our daily lives.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind,
It is.
because I think a lot of people get discouraged
Yeah.
when they feel like they're not doing it perfectly,
Right.
but it's really just about showing up and doing the best you can.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's a journey we can all take,
Yeah,
regardless of our background or beliefs.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Dr. Hansen's work offers a framework that can be adapted to anyone's individual needs and preferences.
Exactly.
So this has been an amazing deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I've learned a lot about how mindfulness works,
Yeah.
and even more importantly, how I can use it to make a positive difference in my own life.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
And thank you to all of you listening for joining us on this journey.
We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought and some practical tools to cultivate greater well-being in your own life.
Remember, the power to shape your own mind, and your own happiness lies within you.
Until next time, stay curious, keep practicing, and keep diving deep.